Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of My Political Opinion. I am your host, Connor Kotzman, and here I talk about my political opinions based on the events that are happening right now. And currently, right now, we're going to be talking about the election. But first, before we get into anything, I'd like to talk about me. So, a little about me. I am currently 20 years old, living on my own and going to college. I don't know what I want to major in yet. Something in the broadcasting world, maybe politics, maybe economics, still uncertain, but I'll hopefully hone in on what I want to do within the next year. Now, time to go into the nature of this podcast. Now, like I said earlier, this is about the election, and the main question I'm going to ask and then answer at the end of this podcast is, was our election stolen? Yes, this question has been asked and answered by many conservatives, Democrats, even Joe Biden and our president. On the one side, the conservatives think that this election was stolen through unconstitutional moves by officials in many states, software glitches, and widespread voter fraud. On the other hand, Democrats believe that this was a fair and well-fought election that, in the end, Joe Biden won. Overall, this is a well-divided and iffy subject to talk about. So, what I do is I go in, I look at different articles from reliable sources and base my opinions based on the facts. Now, these articles have been proven to be both not only true, but reliable constantly, every single publication that they do. So, the first piece of evidence that I read was the Washington Times article regarding Barr talking about the election. Now, he states in the article that to date, we have not seen fraud on a scale that has affected a different outcome in the election. Basically, what he's saying is that the DOJ investigated and found that there has been no widespread voter fraud. This goes against the many conservatives that say that this election has been stolen and that widespread voter fraud has occurred, yet the DOJ says otherwise. In another article by the New York Times, many election and federal government election officials have called this the most secure election in U.S. history, yet again disproving the claims by the conservatives. Now, one piece of evidence that the conservatives have time and time again relied on is the video of ballots being brought in Fulton County, Georgia, and illegally, quote unquote, being counted. Now, according to a New York Times article regarding this, the Republican election officials reviewed this evidence, the video, and have stated that through an investigation they have found that in the instance of these suitcases of ballots, what happened was that one of the election officials thought it was time to leave, and so they packed up the ballots in suitcases like their normal operations there in the state to be secured at the site so that when they came back in the morning they would count it. However, he was wrong, and after he had gone through the whole process, he was told to go back and count the votes. So he took the suitcases out and they were counting the votes, not recounting, but counting the votes again. Now, eventually later they left, and this video has been widespread. They're saying, oh, voter fraud, this and that, when in reality it wasn't, and that they had followed Georgia law to the letter, and through two different recounts, one hand recount, they've confirmed that Joe Biden has won the state. The election was followed through in the laws and was followed correctly. Another popular claim by the president and conservatives is that some swing states, such as Pennsylvania, violated the state's constitution with its ballot signatures, accepting ballots that were unconstitutional, quote unquote. According to the evidence regarding the signatures, quote unquote, a unanimous Pennsylvania Supreme Court and Trump-appointed federal judge both ruled that the signature guidance from the Secretary of the Commonwealth, whatever her name is, Kathy Bokarvar or whatever, was legal. Both found that nothing in state law requires counties to check whether voters' signatures on ballot envelopes match the signatures on file. Along with this, nearly all of Trump's legal challenges have failed to prove that this election was fraudulent nor conducted in an unconstitutional manner. So, yeah, basically what is this saying? The Supreme Court stated that the guidance that was given by the Pennsylvania Secretary of State about accepting voter ballots that had no signatures on them was constitutional and followed the state law that was prescribed by the legislative. So that's what Supreme Courts and courts are there for, to interpret the law. And if something was unconstitutional, they would have said otherwise. However, they did not, and so they accepted ballots without signatures. And finally, for my final pieces of evidence, I wanted to show you were the Supreme Court requests recently. So the first one being the Pennsylvania case regarding the mail-in voting and how it violated the state constitution. The court looked at the case and dismissed it immediately with a 9-0 decision. This in and of itself proving the lack of merit it had and that the Republican claims of violations in the Constitution were wrong. Now, the last one, the most recent case, was regarding Texas. So about 17 or 18 other states had signed on to the Texas election suit that stated that these other 4 states, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, had violated the Constitution through their election process. And in essence, if the court was to decide that it was unconstitutional, that the lawsuit wanted to allow the Republican-controlled legislators to vote on picking who the electors would vote for in the electoral process instead of the popular vote. So the Supreme Court looked at it, and they dismissed the case immediately, saying that these states had no right nor merit to file the lawsuit. So this brings me back all the way around to our first question was this election stolen? And my answer is no. This election was not only not stolen, or let me rephrase that. No, it was not. No, not only was this election not stolen, but it was called the most secure election in U.S. history. These conspiracy theories that are brought on by the president and Republican allies are false in regarding the election was stolen. Joe Biden is going to be our next president of the United States. And furthermore, just down the road more into my opinion, it's ridiculous what the Republicans have been proposing. Like, yes, if you have a claim for a lawsuit such as election fraud and you do have quote unquote evidence and you go to court in the case that the Trump team has to try to prove their election fraud and has been dismissed basically 99% of the time, including both of these Supreme Court cases based on the lack of evidence, you got no claim. And for the people who follow this, I'm sorry to say, but your facts are wrong. Okay, Supreme Court has said, the courts have stated that this election was followed by the book and that Joe Biden won this election. And in my personal opinion, it was great that we saw this extension of mail-in voting because we had a record amount of voters. And the thing is, back in 1776, when we wrote the Declaration of Independence, we fought for our right to vote. This is our right, and that everyone, if they get given the chance, should be able to vote. Okay? No matter what their political opinion is, they should be able to vote. And this election was voted. Joe Biden won. Donald Trump lost. Period. End of story. So thank you guys so much for tuning into this first episode of My Political Opinion. As always, these podcasts are unedited. I release them just full on. I don't edit into an intro or anything. I just talk about the merits. I will post down below the articles in which I cited my evidence from. Thank you guys so much for listening in. Have a wonderful day.